my name is Michelle and welcome to my kitchen and welcome to the joy of cooking with Michelle. I'm sorry I missed everybody last week. I have something special for us today. We are making sweet potato pancakes. I'm really excited about this. I found this recipe and essentially what we're going to do is we're going to make the pancakes, and we have a fancy topping made with ricotta cheese and orange zest. So I'm going to walk you through the recipe, and then we're going to start cooking over here. And then what I'm going to do is, in the end, I'm going to show you what it's going to look like in the end. So the nice thing is, very similar, pancakes, muffins, the same, is that you have your wet ingredients and your dry ingredients, and then you just put your wet ingredients into your dry ingredients. So I have everything laid out here that we need. And I'm going to start with the wet ingredients. So I have the eggs. So to start with, 2 eggs. What we need to do, I should tell you at the very beginning of this, is that you need to take 2 sweet potatoes and you need to cook them. So what I did when I cooked them is I put them in an oven 425 degrees, and you cook it for about 55 minutes. And so I've done that ahead of time, and there's my sweet potatoes. So bake them with the skins on. It's a good idea just to prick them a little bit and then put them in a container, of course oven-proof container, with say some parchment paper or some foil on the bottom, and then in the end make sure they're cooked until it's very soft, and then you almost can squeeze out the sweet potatoes. It's so amazing. This is going to be really nice and savory. So what I've done first is I've just whisked up a couple of eggs to start with, and now I have, don't use the whole 2 sweet potatoes, use 1 cup of the sweet potato mixture. So I'm going to mix that into the eggs. You can see I'm mixing all the wet ingredients first. I have a little bit of vanilla, about half a teaspoon. And we know that with the sweet potatoes that it's going to be sweet already, the whole mixture. I've made 2 very specific alterations to this recipe. So recipes always aren't meant to be followed 100%. You can adapt them to make them healthier. So the 2 things that I've done is I've cut back on the sugar and I've lowered the fat in this recipe. How have I done that? The recipe called for 2 tablespoons of maple syrup for the sugar portion, plus 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. So in this case, I'm just going to use the maple syrup because it's very concentrated, it's very sugary. There we go. So I'm adding that maple syrup to the wet ingredients. And the other thing I would do is I would have added 3 tablespoons of brown sugar to the dry ingredients, but I'm going to take a pass on that. There we go. So that essentially is our wet ingredients. Now, for the dry ingredients, we have about 2/3 of a cup of flour, and the other main ingredient here is the baking powder. Now it says 1.5 tablespoons of baking powder. So we know that it says half a tablespoon. So, which essentially, a tablespoon is equivalent to 3 teaspoons. So we need slightly less than 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Then comes the fun part. We get to add the spices. Use the spices you like. The recipe calls for cinnamon, and nutmeg. So half a teaspoon of each. I always say be very careful about the nutmeg because it's very pungent and it's very easy to overdo the nutmeg using too much nutmeg. Cinnamon, half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Now, one of the secret ingredients in this is I just add the wet and the dry ingredients together. The reason we mix it is to blend in the spices and especially the baking powder. There we go. And then we add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients and then give it a good mix. There we go. There we go. Voila, there's our pancake batter. A very nice consistency. Now with that, what we're going to do, you can see how smooth it is. So make sure it's really well blended. And use your judgment. If it feels too thick, then you can add a little bit more milk to it. But that looks really nice. Now, I'm going to, instead of using butter like it says, my good friends gave me this wonderful product and it's avocado oil spray. So I'm going to turn the stovetop on to medium and I'm just going to liberally spray my frying pan and let it heat up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oh, this is so interesting. This is very interesting. My bad. I was supposed to add the milk to the sweet potato mixture. It feels thick. I'm going to add a little bit. I might add half just to see what it's like. And that's okay. That happens in recipes. Because I don't know if I really want to use all that they gave me. Because I don't want the pancake batter to be so runny, it's not going to hold its shape when it comes into the pan. The sweet potato is rather thick. There we go. So we've got half a cup of milk. That's fine. The batter did seem rather thick to me. And then what you can do is you can use just a scoop like this and use it to scoop it into the frying pan. Oh, this is so exciting! There we go. Give it a good stir. You can see the consistency. Even with half a cup of milk, the consistency hasn't changed greatly. But I think what happens is as the baking soda starts to work, it becomes thick. There we go. Now you can make one big pancake, you could make 3 little pancakes, and then the idea is that when we do the pancakes like this, we wait until it starts bubbling on the top, and that's when you know it's time to flip them over. Pretty cool. So I'm just going to put that there, and I'm going to let these start bubbling up. Pancakes should only ever be flipped once. So don't be anxious about flipping them until you're sure that they're ready. That's what I would say. So you're going to take a few minutes. In the meantime, this topping is super cool. The recipe calls for about 300 grams of ricotta and about a tablespoon of honey and some orange zest. So I've already whipped this up once. You need electric beaters. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of orange zest. Now you can use your judgment. You might want to use a teaspoon, you might want to use a tablespoon, depending on how you feel about orange zest. So I'm just going to go ahead I love orange zest. I think this is going to be really nice. And I think it's also going to blend really nicely the flavors. The flavors will blend very brilliantly with the pancakes. So I'm just going to give them a fast pulse. Sorry, it's going to be loud for a second. There we go. It's very much like whipping cream. And I'm going to put it into the bowl. And when I do that, what this will do is it will just allow people also to use as much as they like. So I'm going to put that on the table so that people can judge for themselves how much they like. Now, remember when I said that I lowered the fat content of this recipe? When we added the milk to this, we added a couple tablespoons of milk to the ricotta. I used milk. They actually had asked for half and half cream. So you could do a number of things. You could use a 2% milk or Homo milk instead of the cream. You can also choose what level of ricotta you get. You can get full fat or half fat. So those are your top tips for the day. Now I'm going to end here and say I hope you enjoy this. You can see, if you come over, you can see that they're just starting to bubble now. Here, let me turn the light on here so you can see on the top of the, there. You can see a little bit what's happening. You can see they're starting. It's still going to be another minute, especially with the sweet potato. I want to make sure that they're well cooked. So I'm going to flip these over. I'm going to put a little So thanks for joining. I'll see you again same time next week. Bye.